he was implying. Sulal, you could learn a lot from this video if you're gonna roleplay as a mental asylum patient, or if the cops ever find out what happened to Nina. Not pretending to be
This is 26-year-old Dawson McGee, sitting in a police interrogation room in the early hours of a Tuesday morning. The Monday night before, he stabbed his own mother to death for asking him to move out of the house and get a job. Dawson is unaware that he is being recorded on a hidden camera. In 3 seconds from now, he will hear the sound of the door being opened by a detective. And at that exact moment, you will see a remarkably noticeable switch in his demeanor.
There's definitely something I want to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about what happened to your mom.
What happened to my mom?
Well, you tell me.
People called me and said something happened at home to mom. They were very bad. What happened to my mom?
Well, that's what I'm asking you.
GTRP.
I was waiting for my brother and sister to tell me.
Okay. Well, so, was your sister home this weekend?
Wait, I'm supposed to have an attorney?
If you want one.
Am I supposed to have I should request an attorney.
Well, that's up to you if you like one. But I mean, we like to talk to you.
-1. Crazy person requesting an attorney.
I want to ask for an attorney.
You want to ask for an attorney?
Yeah.
Okay.
It would come as no surprise that a judge deemed him fit to stand trial. A jury then found him legally sane, and he was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of his mother. All of which was in spite of a continuous charade of mental illness similar to the one you see here. Dawson clearly believed that his passage through the legal system would somehow be easier if he were presumed insane, which is a naive, yet somewhat common misconception that many suspects make when facing serious charges. They have this notion that a plea of insanity would either lower the severity of their punishment or liberate them from it altogether. That instead of being sent to prison, they would simply be released back into society, perhaps with a free psychotherapeutic program to attend on the weekends. This is, of course, a far cry from reality. In the United States, if you're found responsible for a serious offense, but also found not guilty of the crime by reason of insanity, you will be institutionalized at a high-security psychiatric facility. These institutions are without question some of the darkest and most disturbing places in the system. And if you're not actually suffering from the crippling effects of mental illness, living in this type of environment will be a mentally agonizing experience. The foresight of what occurs inside these units would make the majority wish to avoid them. But once you are in, it is very hard to get out, and you will have to serve the same, if not a greater amount of time than you would have had to serve at a regular prison. So to put it briefly, if you commit a serious offense and then pretend to be crazy in order to get away with it, your life from that point forward will be an extremely dark and uncomfortable existence whether you manage to fool the system or not. But there is one benefit, which is the elimination of capital punishment. The United States cannot execute someone deemed insane during the time of their offense, which is the only conceivable reason a defendant would cling to this narrative even after knowing what lies ahead should it succeed. And this happens to be a notion that ties in closely to the primary subject of this video. It will cling to this narrative even after knowing what of capital punishment. The United States cannot execute someone deemed insane during the time of their offense, which is the only conceivable reason a defendant would cling to this narrative even after knowing what lies ahead should it succeed. And this happens to be a notion that ties in closely to the primary subject of this video. It will focus on one particular individual whose interrogation footage is so fraught with blatant trickery that most of the segments presented to you won't even need suggestive commentary. You can simply observe and judge for yourself whether you see authentic behavior or not. But before showing you what pretending to be crazy looks like, we'll briefly show you a genuine case of the criminally insane, or at least a far more convincing one. This is 18-year-old Jared Murray, a freshman at East Central University in Oklahoma. On a Wednesday evening in December, he asked fellow student Gennaro Sanchez for a ride to Walmart. Once they got there, Murray pulled out a handgun and made Gennaro drive to an isolated country road where he shot him twice in the head. He then attempted to hitchhike to Canada, but was soon apprehended by police on the side of the road. He immediately confessed to the crime once apprehended, and was then interrogated by the arresting officer.
I went down to his dorm room and asked if I could be given a ride to Walmart in exchange for $20 gas money.
So he took you to Walmart?
Yes, sir.
And did you both go in?
No, we did not go in, sir.
Okay, and why not?
We pulled into the parking lot, then I pulled the weapon on him and demanded that he take me to Asher, Oklahoma, sir.
Okay, and why did all of a sudden did you decide that you need to go to Asher?
Because I was planning to take him out into the country and kill him.
Okay. Did he say anything?
He panicked, went to pull out his phone. I yanked the phone out of his hand, and then he panicked some more, kept telling me not to kill him. To make him feel more comfortable, I unloaded the clip, unloaded the bullet from the chamber, handed them over to him, and that eased his nerves a little. Then I pulled a second clip out of my pocket and set it on my lap.
And so you're driving east, and so I guess at some point, did you decide now was the time?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and what happened?
I loaded the gun quickly, chambered the round quickly, shot once, missed, shot a second time, hit, jumped out of the car, went around. He was driving 10-15 miles an hour, so it was rather slow. Ran around the hood of the car, and of course it was slow when he wasn't purposefully driving. Tried to pull him out, couldn't get him out until he already had hit the tree. Pulled him out there, dumped him into the, before I dumped him into the ditch, I heard him gurgling. I'm not sure if that was a physiological or physical process after death, but I thought that he might have still lived through that somehow, because he was gurgling, so I shot him again and then shoved him down in the ditch.
He makes a half-hearted attempt to conceal the body with a handful of leaves and a stick. He then walks in the direction of the highway.
Did you get back on the highway?
Yes, sir.
And which way did you go?
North, sir.
And what were your intentions? You were walking north.
Canada, sir.
You was going to Canada?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
He states that his plan was to escape into Canada, but he had nothing to escape with, not even a passport.
I had tried hitchhiking most of the way because
he's so polite, right? And like,
my belief that y'all found the crime scene is if someone were to give me a ride there and then. And then whenever your patrol car was pulling up behind me, I didn't know it was a patrol car. I stuck my thumb out and you was there for the rest.
Jerry, I want to ask you just point blank, because, I mean, you sat here and confessed to
pretty much everything.
In my mind, and I think you might agree with me, just cold-bloodedly killed a young man tonight.
Yes, sir.
Last night. Have you ever killed anybody else?
No, sir.
You will now see the detective attempt to establish a motive for the crime.
I guess I'm having a hard time understanding what you got out of it. Can you help me?
I don't really get anything out of it.
Do you feel any remorse?
I'm sad that I got caught so quickly.
Tell me why I should believe you that there just was going to be one person that was going to suffer from your consequences of killing.
You have no reason to believe me, sir.
I guess I'm just having a real hard time understanding why.
The detective fails to establish a solid motive for a further 2 minutes. The discussion eventually lands on the victim's long-term girlfriend.
You don't think she's going to be upset, heartbroken?
I think she will be, sir.
How does that make you feel?
No different, sir.
Okay. I think you've been honest with me. I think you've told me just straight up, right out of the book, what happened.
Yes, sir.
But, you know, you've done a terrible thing tonight.
Yes, sir.
You killed a young man.
Yes, sir.
Just for the simple fact of, I guess pretty much this is safe for you.
Yes, sir.
And what do you think should happen to you?
Death sentence, sir.
And why do you think you deserve a death sentence?
An eye for an eye, sir.
Do you believe an eye for an eye?
Yes, sir.
Jared Murray was found not guilty by reason of insanity. He was committed to a high-security mental facility where he is to remain indefinitely.
Anything to say for yourself today?
No, ma'am.
Any reason why you might have done this, young man?
No, ma'am.
No reason.
No, ma'am.
You have nothing to say for yourself.
No, ma'am.
You want to tell the community anything?
No, ma'am.
Did you confess to police?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you proud of what you've done?
No, ma'am.
Do you have remorse for what you've done?
No, ma'am.
He appears completely void of human emotion. No regret, remorse, shame, nor fear. He had both taken a life and destroyed his own, yet seems indifferent to the circumstances. With respect to his interrogation footage, the most conspicuous element was the complete lack of self-preservation. He didn't once attempt to deflect blame, nor afford himself any type of justification for his actions. He simply spoke in a factual, non-biased manner, impartial to how his words may have been taken or even twisted to be used against him. There was no calculated structure to his behavior whatsoever. So with this notion in mind, let's move on to the primary subject of this video.
Motherfucker, dude. When does this actually happen? Is it birth? Is it upbringing? Like,
I thought it could be a badge until I heard he has a girlfriend. Definitely not a badge, but an avid watcher of the Dr. Disrespect.
yeah, I mean, it can't all be like upbringing. It has to be like from the start a defect of some sort.
Did you pee up? Do not think about getting up, right, buddy?
But then again, he must have felt remorse at one point in his life to know what the word means, right? So it can't really be. What? What happened timing? Oh, the pause sound.
Alright.
You heard someone explain it? Yeah, but can you really explain it? Like, if you never feel bad about anything, can you really explain what remorse is to someone? I feel like it's the fucking collar dilemma. You know, explaining colors to a colorblind person. Kinda.
Have a seat. Did you pee up? Do not think about getting up, right, buddy?
I guess you can understand enough to fake it, but then he doesn't know.
This is 19-year-old Nicholas Cruz, who 3 hours and 55 minutes prior to this moment murdered 17 people at his former high school in Parkland, Florida. Among the dead were 3 teachers and 14 students, the majority of whom were 14 years old. A further 17 students were seriously wounded during the massacre. The gunman dropped his rifle 7 minutes into the rampage and then blended in with the crowd as he ran out of the building. He was at large for 1 hour and 20 minutes, during which time he stopped off at a Subway and then a McDonald's, where he sat down and casually spoke to one of the victim's brothers. The student was unaware that his older sister had just been shot through the chest by the man sitting across the table. The description of the shooter was transmitted by police over the radio, which led to an officer identifying and arresting him on a street just 2 miles away from the school. He was taken to the nearest hospital and examined by a doctor for roughly 1 hour and 45 minutes. He was medically cleared and then transferred to the local sheriff's office, where he was subjected to interrogation.
Do not think about getting up, right, buddy?
Alright,
From the
buddy.
moment the subject entered the room,
Hello,
his
Mr.
eyes had been
Force.
fixed upon nothing
I
but the
hope
floor.
you and
He's-
chat are doing well. You will be trying the Doom Eternal DLC. If I recall, you enjoyed the base game. The violence, speed, and momentum is dialed to 11 compared to the base game. Thank you for the
Cranked up
streams.
to 11.
Feels okay, man.
Yeah, I'm not sure when though.
He's held on to this downward-facing gaze as if he's either in a state of shock or disconnected from the moment.
Thank you, sir. Ah, what the fuck? Is he trying to break his fingers?
At the exact moment the door shuts, he lifts up his head to observe his surroundings. His behavior completely shifts once he believes no one is watching. If we look at his demeanor a
looking
moment
directly
earlier,
into the camera,
we can see
though.
the contrast. He went from being detached to alert. His behavior changed as the environment changed, which is a recurring theme throughout this interrogation. It shows us that his mind isn't wandering off during these moments of apparent disconnection. He is in fact fully present and very aware of what's going on around him. As he looks up, his eyes immediately lock onto the camera. He now knows he is still being watched, and his following gestures will resemble that of someone with suicidal tendencies. At face value, these externalized suicidal thoughts may seem genuine to some, but when framed with the rest of his behavior throughout this interrogation, they are exposed for what they really are: an act, a calculated attempt to garner sympathy and paint his character in what he believes to be a more positive light.
All right, how you doing, Nick? You all right? Gotta be able to speak so I can hear you. All right, I just need to ask you really your name and date of birth just to confirm I got it right, and then I'm gonna see you want a glass of water or something. What's your first name?
This is a situation where the proof against the suspect is already conclusive. He is without question responsible for the crimes under investigation, making the pursuit of a confession not essential. The police know he did it, but they need to know why he did it, which would already require a complex strategy in order to obtain the correct information. But the suspect's first recorded statements upon his arrest have now made the procedure considerably more difficult.
What's going on today, bro?
The demons, man.
Demons?
Voices.
Yeah, no problem.
Voices.
Voices and demons?
Where's the voices? What happened?
Shut up. Just be quiet, man.
Shut up. Demons, man. Voices.
These two words have now forged the primary stratagem of his own interrogation, which is to cut through deception under the guise of supportive examination. The questions will be designed to lock him into a specific narrative about his alleged psychosis, while simultaneously giving him the impression that his responses are for his own benefit. Anything he says now can be used to refute any amendments he might come up with at a later stage. We all know that after this interrogation, he will have significantly more time to think, study, and even seek guidance from professionals about how the legal system interconnects with mental illness. Yet the majority of this forthcoming knowledge could be useless to him depending on what he says during these moments. The more details he gives away, the less options he will have for his defense later on. But pursuing this objective is complicated, as there are two very common scenarios for when this type of suspect gets interrogated.
I was a senior
And
in
just to be
high school
entirely
in
clear,
Florida when this happened. For weeks after it happened, everyone at school felt uneasy and the school felt devoid of life. Just crazy to think that someone could do something like that.
Wait, what? You were... I didn't pay attention to what school this was. But you were in this school? Holy fuck. Yeah, I wouldn't go... For weeks after it happened, everyone at school felt uneasy, bro. I'm surprised the school was open.
Don't smash it, okay? Don't smash it!
I mean... Oh, a different school in Florida. Oh. Not the same school. Okay.
Here, by this type of suspect, we mean someone who is 1. Pretending to be insane, and 2. Not fooling anyone. Their most common response is to simply shut down. They regress into total silence or some type of catatonic state, and the interrogation never gets off the ground. The other common response is the exact opposite. They erupt into hysteria or supposed delirium, and everything from that point forward becomes incoherent. The lead detective, John Curcio, must not allow either of these scenarios to transpire, and this makes the first 2 minutes absolutely crucial. He needs to create a positive first impression and resemble the furthest thing from a threat, while at the same time maintain a presence of authority. His temperament will be easygoing and non-confrontational, but also encouraging when extracting a response. His role at this moment is the ally. He needs to be liked, respected, but must not be feared. Not yet anyway. Going off the suspect's initial demeanor, the detective will know that he is far more likely to regress into a state of silence at this opening stage, and if he can prevent that from happening within the first 2 minutes, he is over the first obstacle.
Alright, how you
Makes
doing, Nick?
sense.
I just
just
need to ask
feed
you
into the
really
demons,
your name and
so to
date of
speak.
birth just to confirm I got it right, and then I'm going to see you want a glass of water or something. What's your first name? Come on, Nick. Huh? Spell it for me.
Okay.
Come on, I'm old. You got to talk so I can hear you. N-I-K. O.
L.
Okay. A-S. And what's your middle name?
Corona actually saved more lives in the US because the schools closed.
I'm gonna need some statistics on that.
Jacob. J-A-C. What's your date of birth? Okay, you need to relax, because I'm the last detective or policeman you're going to have to talk to. So right off the bat, that should be somewhat comforting to you to know that I'm the last guy you got to talk to. But the thing about it is, look at me. I got to be able to hear you. Okay? So all I want to do is get basic information from you, and then we'll get into the, whether you want a glass of water, all that stuff. What's your date of birth?
09.
January?
09.
09 September.
The investigation team already know the answers to these basic questions. Their only purpose are to initiate a response, and their non-threatening nature make it more likely for the suspect to engage. They are essentially the opening wedge to get the two-way dialogue flowing, and although the suspect is still partially committed to his catatonic state as we can clearly see, he is still responsive, making it unlikely for him to regress into complete silence from this point forward. Everything up to this moment has gone to plan. The detective has one foot in the door, and he can now develop the relationship from a more secure position. He goes about this with a standard method of rapport development, the offer of food and water.
All right, let me do this. You want a cold water? You don't know if you want cold water?
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to bring in 2, because I want one that was hot. And then if you decide you want to have it, that's fine. You sure you don't want something to eat? Okay.
The refusal to accept food and water is a familiar response which you may have already seen on this channel. It's a glaring manifestation of shame. This is not to be confused with guilt nor remorse, both of which require the acceptance of responsibility, which in turn directs our focus outwards on the feelings of others. Shame, on the other hand, shifts our focus on the perceptions of others towards ourselves. The subject is afraid of how it will look if he accepts the offer considering the circumstances. He instead wants to appear as if he's so negatively affected by the events that he's unconcerned with meeting his basic needs.
Of course, I have so many different keys. All right, I'll be right back.
Once again, his demeanor abruptly switches when the detective leaves the room. With his head buried in his hands, it's anyone's guess as to what is going through his mind at this moment. But what you are about to see next is extremely revealing. Cruz was a left-handed shooter. The surveillance at the school would confirm this, and if you pay close attention to the movements of his hands in the next moments, although very subtle, you can see that he's reimagining holding his weapon. But what's more telling is how his demeanor abruptly stops and then completely switches right before he looks in the direction of the camera. He goes from holding a rifle and beginning to smirk, to then pretending to cry and reverting back to his suicidal mannerisms. This all occurs in under 4 seconds.
A little bit of reaching there, I'm not gonna lie. A little bit of reaching.
It could be assumed that for a brief moment, he was not only recollecting the attack, but gaining gratification from doing so. He then remembered he was on film, giving reason for the sharp adjustment. His true self was reliving the attack and enjoying his work, while his false self was so dejected to the point he was externalizing suicidal thoughts.
Alright. A little bit raging there, but interesting. I can't watch the whole thing, it's a fucking hour, dude. Barack Obama, back off.